Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It's October 5th. This will be our chart lesson for the day. And here's a look at our daily chart with the envelope bands on. You can see we're bouncing right off that midline today. Very, very funny day, really, because we traded down so bearishly early on and then rallied back out of there and still closed way off the high. We closed really as a somewhat of a doji type bar, and a lot of times those are found at the top or bottoms of reversals. So we may end up trading lower. We could continue higher here. This doesn't really help us a lot. We went higher, but we did find resistance right at that midline. That's the purple one. That's the same thing as the 21 EMA. The rest of these are based off fib levels, and these are proprietary numbers, so I don't really share them or anything. Unless you've purchased our indicator, and then you can have the numbers. But if you haven't, they're proprietary, so I don't give those out. But these are all these others are based on fib numbers, and this is based on 21 EMA basically. So interesting day. Again, not a lot of clues from the daily chart other than it looks like we could be going lower. Right now we're trading basically where we closed, not much going on, but that doesn't mean anything in the after hours. So, uh, but not a lot of volume late in the day today. But let's flip over to the intraday chart and we'll go through it. But you can see the day here we traded down rather strongly, bounced and had a really strong rally out of there. And but you can see there wasn't a lot of volume after about 2:30 today. Really, it's kind of low volume there. It had some movement, but there's not a lot of volume there. Actually, maybe the last couple of days I haven't had. You can see if you go back here, I mean, you can see how much volume we had. You can see how much wider the gray is between there and the red line. So maybe it's about normal. Or maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just thinking of that one day. But you can see the volume is definitely picked back up. We had a couple of low volume days there for a while, and then things have kind of picked back up again. So anyway, that's the way it looks like on the daily. You can see the spike in channel down, and then we just rallied out of there. And I guessed at this early channel, and maybe, the blue channel is definitely valid, but it looks like we had a break and two legs down to a new low on this one, and then we had another leg with a break and a couple of legs down. So maybe that was really just it. This blue channel would have still been helpful, but you can kind of see if you move it out of there, it looks like we had two legs down. But I don't think you can argue that this blue channel is not correct. And I had to guess at this low today because when I posted this, prices were maybe bouncing around in here, and it was obvious that you had to find the other side here, but you didn't know where that was going to be. So what I did was I used that midline, and you can kind of see how prices are bouncing off that midline, and looks like I was relatively accurate with it. So that's a little trick you can use sometimes. Again, just kind of give you an idea what I did. Let's assume you don't have that low right there, and you see prices bouncing around, but you can see the midline up through there, and you can see how this is bouncing. So I knew this didn't look right because look, we're not coming back to the midline at all there. So, and we're not getting, if you come back here, well, maybe how you say, maybe there's an overshoot, but what I believe it was is you have to move this down until this midline fits, like so. And then notice you bounced right to the tip. Perfect. So I mean that was a pretty good guess this morning. And I say a guess, but I would say it's an experienced, educated guess based on a lot of experience knowing how to do this. So and I do that quite often. And sometimes you can even find the trend line off the low side when it doesn't come back up to the highs very often. You just draw your line and then pull it up, and sometimes you'll find a trend line that way as well. So there's more than one way to skin a cat based on the way we find these channels, and as you get more experience, these trend lines and channels, you'll start to learn to do what I just showed you there. So it's not as difficult as you think. Of course, you got to have some experience and work at it a while, but you can do it. So anyway, somebody else mentioned to me, most of you know that I've grandfathered in. I've had my NinjaTrader account or software so long that I'm grandfathered in, and I don't have to use the NinjaTrader broker. I can use any broker I want. Because I bought a multi-broker license before 2015 when they changed the rules. So if you come in after 2015 and bought a license to use NinjaTrader or leased it, then you're forced to go to the NinjaTrader broker. And so I'd say that just so a lot of you will ask me questions about the NinjaTrader broker and so forth, and I don't know anything about it because I've never used them. So I'm very familiar with the NinjaTrader software. Again, I don't use all the bells and whistles. I don't think you need them. But I do love the NinjaTrader software, and I love using it, and that's why I promote it, and that's why you see it on my charts, because I like it. But I do not use the NinjaTrader broker, and it's not because I have anything against the NinjaTrader brokerage. I've just never used them because I've got several other brokerages I've used over the years, and one mainly that we get our discounts with, and so I like using them, and that's why I trade live with a different broker. But where I'm going with this was somebody asked me, I've had a couple of people say that they've changed the NinjaTrader margins before any kind of high volatility news item that I guess they're taking their margins all the way to full margins based on the CME. And so my broker has not done that, but obviously NinjaTrader has, because a couple of people have mentioned that to me. So pay attention to these and be flat going into them well before you go into them, because what will happen is I think the margins may be 11,000 for a single contract at full margin. So if you've got, just to say you even got 10,000 in an account and you just take a trade going into this news, and so when they change the margin and suddenly you don't have enough margin in your account, they exit you, and you could get exit with a loss. You might get lucky and get exited with a profit. But if you just entered your trade a few minutes before that and it's moved against you, and suddenly the margin kicks on, you're going to get kicked out. So just be aware of that. That's a long, convoluted story to get there, but I just, please don't ask me a lot of questions about the NinjaTrader brokerage, because honestly, I don't know anything about the brokerage. I've never used them. So I don't know anything about their margins or when they change their margins. I don't get notified about any of that. We are a NinjaTrader vendor, and so we work with NinjaTrader, and we get specials with a NinjaTrader occasionally, different things like that. But I do not trade with their brokerage, so I'm not that familiar with the brokerage. So I do know that their commissions they're competitive with most people. They're not as good as our group brokerage rates, but they are competitive. So anyway, I wasted 8 minutes. I wouldn't say I've wasted, but I've used up 8 minutes. Let's get to the trades. Not a whole lot of them today, so it shouldn't take too long anyway, but I need to get moving here. 7 o'clock came right in the middle of this mess right here, and you've already had your break, and prices are trying to make a new low, and then suddenly they do make a new low and they come back. I like this short just because look how many times we bounce. I don't have the resistance line drawn across there, but look how many times we turn down there. And you get a second entry there, although the signal bar is not very good. But there's a new high, and you try to go higher once, twice. I like that as a failure. It's probably going to trap people, and you can see it how it drops pretty quickly. And so I like that trade. Of course, I marked it green because it is advanced, and you need to know what you're doing with it. But we do drop on down, and this is another advanced one. You got plenty of room to get out before this low here, and this should have taken on off here if we were going to go higher. So the fact that there's a hidden second entry in here, notice you're moving down, you try to go higher once, you're moving down, you try to go higher twice, and it fails pretty quickly and turns down with a very bearish bar. To me, that looks like another failure. And so if you understand what's going on, again, these are both very advanced trades. They're not for most of you, but I wanted to talk about them and go over them. And this, you're only looking for a scalp here or move down to the lows, but this turns out to be a pretty good move. So both of those were really good moves, actually. And then we bounce. Unfortunately, you don't get a setup to buy, and this thing just takes up. And the next thing you know, it's going lower again. And here we got another failure. Notice you're moving down, you get a first entry. You're moving down, you get a second entry. It turns down. It's very similar to what we've already been seeing over here. And at this point, you're going to probably at least make a new low on this yellow channel. And you got plenty of room down to here in case it does bounce here again, which it does. It goes on down lower before it bounces, but it's still, you got to be concerned about that. So that, and you can tell this trap people, look how quickly. All these people that got long here are getting trapped out right here, temporarily anyway. As they take it back up, it ends up going exactly where all these people probably thought it was going to go, but they trapped all these shorts back out right here. And all that is the range rules that we teach you. It's going to fail, even if it's only temporary, which it was. So this turns out to be a nice move. You can't enter in this. It's tempting to go long right there, but you're below the support resistance, and you can see it acting as resistance multiple times. You can't risk that. It ends up working, but you can't risk it. You run up, you get a close outside new high, and then you make a lower high right here. I like going short right there, and you can see where this trend line came into play here. Just go short, comes back here. There's another second entry right here. I didn't mark it. I think it's a little too congested. Not a very good signal bar anyway. It's a shame because it turns out to be a really nice trade, and it just keeps working lower. But I don't see anything there that I would want to risk. And unfortunately, you only get a first entry, and then you got a new low. But there's a possibility. There's a yellow channel. When I say a new low, I meant on the cyan channel right there. But you get a new low, and then you get a first entry, second entry right off of another possible key entry point and the EMA. And that's a fairly bearish bar, and that's another pretty nice move. And then now you get a break here, and you get a first entry. It turns back up, and so when it comes back by that same bar when it comes back by that bar right there, that's a second entry short right there, and boom, there it goes again. Kind of get congested there. You get a little breakout. Notice there's two legs up and a second entry short, so if it breaks below that, the problem here is it's still above the EMA, and we should be reversing here soon, most likely. If you did see the blue channel, there's a good chance we're going lower, and maybe you could call this red. I think it's real close just because of this congestion, because it could break lower here and turn back up again. So I mark that one green. It's real close borderline. It's a second entry short, and where prices are trending lower, and the blue channel looks very valid. So the problem is you don't know where the bottom is, and so it could bounce on you quicker than you think it could. But right here, it doesn't really matter because you got plenty of room to get out and plenty of room before you get down here anyway. So even if the trend channel was coming right across here, you got plenty of room to get out. So it doesn't really matter on that part, but it's something to think, it's something to be concerned about. I don't see anything in here which is too choppy, too congested, and you don't want to be buying. We're still trending lower. It's real tempting to buy down here, but just don't do it. We come back to the midline again. You get a little bit of an overshoot maybe there, maybe it's not, maybe I just don't have it drawn up enough, but you're not touching right here, so that leads me to think that the line is more like that, and you can tell by those closes, but that little close right there that closes on the above that midline, it could be closing higher above this line because of that midline. So it's hard to know which one of those lines because it works for both of them. So, but to me, this looks correct, and it looks like a little bit of an overshoot. And then the break comes right after, so that kind of confirms it. And you get a little two-leg correction. I don't think you want to go long yet. It runs up, makes a double top, I like going short there. It didn't make a new high, so I marked it green for that reason. I think it's still a fairly reasonable trade, but I mean, even if that is congestion, which it looks like, you still got room back down to these lows. But it just shoots on down. And also, not only is that does it's a double top and it doesn't make a new high, but notice you get a first entry, second entry that fails, and you got a first entry, second entry. You really got two legs back up. So even though this doesn't make a new low, you could still look at that as two legs of correction after a failed second entry long. So that's more reasons to take that trade. And it drops on down, comes back here. And notice there's a new high. You try to go higher once, twice. That's a classic failure. Breaks lower there, go with it. Runs down, makes a new low on this yellow channel, then runs up, gets a close outside new high, and you might take that second entry. The problem is we just came off the lows, and now we're back above the midline, so it could bounce off that midline and go higher. If you've got enough room in there, maybe you take that anyway. If this was a little further away from the midline and the EMA, I'd probably make it red. But you could probably take that trade anyway. And we run down, we make a new low. You got a higher low here, but that's too congested. It's moved a little bit too much to call it a higher low. There's actually another second entry long right here. But again, I just don't think you need to be going long in this uptrend, even though it's probably going to go back up to the trend line in a minimum. Looking back on it after the fact, yeah, you probably should have taken that trade. It's a second entry long. Notice the new high, first entry, second entry. You're looking for prices to make a new high, and everything's above the EMA right now, but that trend line looming up there and how bearish this market's been, it's just it's a little risky. Again, you could argue for it to be green. The problem here really too is that I forgot about is it doesn't break above this bar. You get this inside bar, and then that's clear congestion, and you can't use an inside bar. So for that reason, I'm going to back up and go back to my original thinking that I'd skip that trade because I'd forgot about that little doji. Runs up, you're just it does make a new high. You're chopping higher, and you expect it to turn down here. Possibility. It doesn't end up doing that, but that's what your expectation is. So when you get this first entry short, second entry short right there, I would take that trade. And that's just what 7 ticks on a second entry. That's a quick, easy move, and then it's rocketing the opposite direction. No chance to get in that. It's coming back down here. I don't think there's no shorts there I really like, and you can't go long out of this, but notice you got a new low here. You try to go lower once, and then it turns down there and gives a little breakout pullback on this little range and shoots up. I like going long there because that does pretty much confirm that trend line as well. And off it goes, because you really could draw this trend line off these lows down here. So when it bounced there multiple times, you can clearly see that trend line holding. Then you get a first entry and a second entry right here. It was a second entry when it broke above this, but again, that's an inside bar, but it actually turned down and then turned back up. So there's a little bit of a trap there, and you can clearly see right at the key entry point, you got a break and new low here, and so the problem is it's a little bit congested. Once this closed, I would not go long, but if you entered on that engulfing bar, maybe you go with it, and that's why I marked it green. Notice it runs up, and you try to go lower a few times, and it bounces again there. That's really close enough to call it off that key entry point. It's just not a great signal bar, and it's a hidden second entry. Notice it works down first entry, works down, and so when it broke higher, it's a second entry. If you went to a little smaller chart, you'd probably see two legs back and a second entry long. Takes off, nothing else there. Then it just rockets straight down. Somebody's probably going to look and say, hey, that's a second entry right there, but that just looks like sideways congestion. It looks like one leg down, so I'd treat that as a first entry wait on a lower low here after it breaks out of that little yellowish khaki channel. And so to me, the second entry doesn't trigger till here, and that's not a good enough signal bar. There is a higher low here, but it's below the EMA. You are still looking for a high, so I'd want to see a reversal, which doesn't happen, and look how we end up going lower again. So that's why you follow the rules, even though sometimes you have a gut feeling that it's probably going higher anyway, which it did, especially on that reversal, kind of the failed second entry. But you just follow the rules, and you're going to be better off. And notice you get 2 legs down, comes back. It's just kind of chopping sideways, but I like this one because it's a first entry and then a second entry, and there's also a little hidden second entry. But I like that bar right there. You got enough room to get out between this before this double top. So if it's going to come, it's probably going to at least test that. It runs up, and it actually gives you a failed second entry short here, but you don't have much room to the highs, and that definitely looks congested right there. You got your couple of bars that just don't have any bodies, and so I didn't like that one. Then same thing here, it drops back down. You do get a triple test here, and it's the first break. You actually could have entered there. I should have at least made that green. I didn't like it because of that. It's an inside bar, but they do have matching lows. But it's just hard to know what's really, you can kind of see prices are going sideways here. So it's just kind of hard to see exactly it's hard to know there. But when it comes back and bounces again, I like going long there, especially when it broke lower and turned up. You could go long either place here, or one tick above that. I like it either way because it's proven support now. And you got that little trap where it breaks lower and turns up. Just runs up and it's working sideways, but once again, you get a triple test, and that confirms your trend line after you drew it off that first swing. So I like that one. That takes it on up to the other side of the channel. You get a little overshoot. I wouldn't go short in here. And you can see why, because it runs it on back up again. There's no longs in there. And then finally you're working back. And there is a reversal right here, but it doesn't set up perfectly. So I don't think you want to take it. It's just too late in the day. That's how I see it. So I went through those last trades a little quickly, but I lost 8 minutes early in the talking about the brokerage and so forth. So I wanted to move on through these. But anyway, interesting day. And again, it doesn't really leave us a clue of what is most likely to happen tomorrow. We might just kind of go sideways up and down for a few bars here for a few days, and as the market kind of finds where it's headed next. So again, there's just not a lot of clues yet to know for certain to say, hey, I think we're going up tomorrow, I think we're going down tomorrow. We could go either way. But anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com.